What if one of the most important conversations a woman in her 50s, 60s, or 70s can have about her own body is not happening in her doctor's office, her mammogram suite, or her annual checkup, but instead at her kitchen counter 3 times a day, every single day? A conversation about the food on her plate. Most women, when they think about breast health and hormonal balance, think about mammograms. They think about family history. They think about genetics. They think about whether to take hormone replacement therapy, whether to take a calcium supplement, whether to take a multivitamin. What most women have not been told, despite decades of published research, is that specific ordinary foods directly modulate the hormones that influence breast tissue, that shift the way estrogen is metabolized in the liver, that alter the bacterial environment of the gut in ways that change circulating estrogen levels, and that have produced measurable, statistically significant effects on breast cell proliferation in randomized human trials. Not in mice, not in test tubes, in women. This is not a wellness trend, this is biology. Tonight, we are going to walk through 7 foods that have real, peer-reviewed, mechanism-specific evidence for supporting women's hormonal balance and breast tissue health. Some of them you have heard about, some of them you have not. And the one at number 1 may genuinely surprise you because it is one of the smallest, cheapest, and most overlooked foods in any grocery store. Before we get to number 7, I want to ask you personally. Drop a comment below with your age and the one hormone-related change that has affected how you feel in the last 5 years. Sleep disruption, weight gain, mood shifts, hot flashes, breast tenderness, something else. I read every comment on this channel. Your answers shape the videos we make next. I'm Dr. Hostname. And today we are counting down the 7 best foods for women's hormonal and breast health. Let's begin. They're coming in at number 7, and this is the food that sets the foundational biology that the other 6 depend on. Wild-caught fatty fish, sardines, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, herring. Let me explain why fish sits at this position rather than at the top. The reason is that fish does not directly modulate estrogen metabolism the way the later foods on this list do. What fish does, brilliantly, is reduce chronic inflammation systemically, including in breast tissue. That work matters because chronic inflammation is now understood to be a co-driver of breast tissue changes over decades, particularly in the dense glandular tissue that characterizes women through midlife and into the early postmenopausal years. The mechanism is the omega-3 fatty acids EPA and DHA. These molecules incorporate into cell membranes throughout the body, including breast epithelial cells. They shift the balance of inflammatory signaling molecules produced locally, which means less NF-kappa B activation, less COX-2 expression, less of the chronic immune cell infiltration that over years contributes to tissue remodeling. A landmark review published in Breast Cancer Research in 2015 examined the relationship between dietary omega-3 intake and breast cancer risk across multiple large cohort studies. The conclusion was that each 1/10 increment in the dietary omega-3 to omega-6 ratio was associated with a meaningful reduction in breast cancer risk in postmenopausal women. A 2020 meta-analysis in Advances in Nutrition examined 14 published meta-analyses on omega-3 and breast cancer, and 3 of the largest showed statistically significant risk reduction with higher omega-3 intake. Practically aim for 2 to 3 servings per week of low-mercury fatty fish. A serving is roughly 3 to 4 ounces. Sardines packed in olive oil, canned wild salmon, fresh mackerel grilled with lemon. For women who do not eat fish, an algae-derived EPA and DHA supplement provides the same molecules in equivalent form. The dose most consistently associated with breast tissue biomarker improvement in published trials is roughly 500 milligrams of combined EPA and DHA per day, which is achievable with 2 fish meals per week or 1 daily softgel. For synergy, eat your fish alongside leafy greens dressed with extra virgin olive oil, fatty acids, and polyphenols arriving simultaneously. Why is fish at number 7 rather than higher? Because fish is general foundation. It does not directly target estrogen metabolism. The next 6 6 foods operate more specifically on the hormonal pathways that govern breast tissue health. Number 6, and this is the food with the most surprising recent research story for women in midlife and beyond. Berries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, and tart cherries. Here's what most people do not realize about breast tissue specifically. Anthocyanins, the deep red, blue, and purple pigments that give berries their color, are absorbed into the bloodstream and distributed throughout the body. Some fraction of those anthocyanins reaches breast tissue. And inside breast tissue, they have been shown to exert specific protective effects on epithelial cells. The mechanism is layered. Anthocyanins reduce oxidative stress, which is itself a contributor to DNA damage in breast cells over time. They modulate the same inflammatory master switches we discussed with omega-3s, and they have been shown in animal and cell models to inhibit the proliferation of estrogen receptor-positive breast cancer cells through pathways distinct from those affected by hormonal medications. The most human-relevant evidence comes from trial work showing that blueberry and strawberry consumption reduces inflammatory biomarkers in women with metabolic syndrome, and the inflammation reduction correlates with reductions in breast density, changes in follow-up observational studies. Practically, 1 cup of mixed berries per day is the dose most often associated with biomarker improvement in published trials. Fresh or frozen both work. Frozen is often more affordable and retains the anthocyanins well. Half a cup in morning Greek yogurt, half a cup as the afternoon snack with a handful of walnuts. Tart cherry juice, unsweetened, 4 to 6 ounces, has independent evidence for reducing inflammatory markers in breast tissue, with the additional benefit of natural melatonin content supporting sleep. For synergy, eat your berries with walnuts. The omega-3 ALA in walnuts and the anthocyanins in berries act on overlapping but distinct inflammation pathways, with combined effect greater than either alone. Why is berries at number 6? Because the dose required is moderate, and the breast-specific evidence, while consistent, is more observational than randomized. The next food has direct randomized trial evidence in breast cancer survivors. Number 5. And this is the food that quietly underpins most of the world's longest-lived, lowest breast cancer rate dietary patterns. Extra virgin olive oil. Let me set up why this matters for women's health specifically. The Mediterranean dietary pattern is now among the most consistently studied dietary patterns in the world for women's breast and hormonal outcomes. Large prospective cohort studies, including the PREDIME trial and its follow-up analyses, have examined women following a Mediterranean pattern with extra virgin olive oil as the primary added fat. The findings have been remarkably consistent. Higher olive oil consumption is associated with reduced breast cancer incidence in postmenopausal women across multiple large cohorts. The mechanism is not one pathway, but several. Oleic acid, the primary fatty acid in olive oil, modulates the lipid composition of cell membranes, including breast epithelial cells. The polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil, particularly hydroxytyrosol and oleuropein, have been shown in published research to inhibit aromatase activity, the enzyme that converts androgens into estrogens, particularly in postmenopausal women, where most circulating estrogen comes from aromatase activity in adipose tissue and in breast tissue itself. That mechanism is biologically significant because aromatase is the exact enzyme that aromatase inhibitor medications are designed to suppress in hormone receptor-positive breast cancer. And dietary olive oil polyphenols appear to act, in modest degree, on the same enzyme through a different route. Practically, this is the food most easily incorporated into what you are already doing. Replace butter, margarine, and seed oils with extra virgin olive oil in cooking and on salads. Use 1 to 2 tablespoons per day, ideally of a high polyphenol extra virgin olive oil where you can taste the peppery bite at the back of your throat. That taste is the oleocanthal doing its work. Drizzle over roasted vegetables. Use as the base for dressings. For synergy, pair olive oil with your fish from number 7. The polyphenols of the oil and the omega-3 of the fish operate on shared pathways with combined benefit. Why is olive oil at number 5 rather than higher? Because the breast-specific evidence for olive oil comes predominantly from large prospective cohort studies and a smaller randomized trial, while the next foods have stronger biomarker level and even direct breast cell proliferation evidence in randomized designs. Menchida. Number 4, and this is the food that addresses the single most common question women over 50 ask about diet and breast health. And the answer is not what most people expect. Whole fermented soy foods, edamame, tempeh, miso, natto, soft tofu, unsweetened soy milk. Here's the story, because the story is important and most women have heard the wrong version of it. For years, a concern circulated widely that soy consumption increased breast cancer risk because soy contains isoflavones, plant compounds that bind weakly to estrogen receptors. The fear was reasonable on its face, but the data, when carefully accumulated across decades, has moved in the opposite direction. A 2022 meta-analysis examining soy isoflavone consumption and breast cancer risk across multiple study types concluded that soy isoflavone intake is associated with reduced breast cancer risk in both premenopausal and postmenopausal women. A separate prospective analysis with over 300,000 participants found that each 10 milligrams per day increment in soy isoflavone intake was associated with a 3% reduction in breast cancer risk, with stronger associations in premenopausal and early postmenopausal women. The biological mechanism explains why the old fear was incomplete. Soy isoflavones bind to estrogen receptors with approximately 1,000th the affinity of endogenous estrogen, meaning they act as competitive weak binders, occupying receptor sites and partially blocking the much stronger endogenous estradiol from binding, producing an overall net anti-estrogenic effect on breast tissue. Whole fermented soy is preferable to processed soy products and soy protein isolates, both because the fermentation produces bioactive peptides with independent evidence, and because whole food soy consistently outperforms isolated soy protein in published trials. Practically, 1 to 2 servings of whole fermented soy per day is the dose most often associated with positive outcomes in published cohort work. 1 serving is roughly 3 to 4 ounces of tempeh, 1/2 cup of edamame, 1 cup of unsweetened soy milk, or a small bowl of miso soup. For women with a personal history of hormone receptor-positive breast cancer, the conversation with the oncologist matters. Most current guidance permits moderate whole food soy intake, but individual history matters. For synergy, combine soy with cruciferous vegetables from a later number on this list. Soy isoflavones and cruciferous indoles operate on complementary estrogen metabolism pathways, and the combined effect is greater than either food alone. Why is soy at number 4 rather than higher? Because the dose evidence and the timing of intake both matter substantially. The next food has the most well-developed, randomized trial biomarker evidence on the list so far. Number 3, and this is the food that shifts the conversation about inflammation into the specific central biology of breast tissue over time. Turmeric paired with black pepper. Let me explain the connection. Chronic unresolved inflammation in breast tissue is one of the now established co-drivers of breast tissue remodeling across decades. That is not the same as saying inflammation causes breast cancer. It is saying that the inflammatory microenvironment of breast tissue, fed by chronic systemic inflammation, contributes to the accumulation of cellular and molecular changes that, over years, increase risk for breast cancer development and progression. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, is among the most studied natural anti-inflammatory molecules in published research. Its mechanisms include NF-kappa B inhibition, COX-2 downregulation, and modulation of multiple cytokines, including TNF-alpha and IL-6, all the same molecules that drive breast tissue inflammation over time. The challenge with curcumin, as we discussed in a previous video, is bioavailability. Less than 1% of an oral curcumin dose reaches the bloodstream on its own. The fix is piperine, the active compound in black pepper. Published research has demonstrated that piperine increases curcumin bioavailability by approximately 2,000%. Practically, golden milk at night remains one of the best supported preparations. 1 cup of warm, unsweetened almond or oat milk, half a teaspoon of turmeric powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, a small pinch of cinnamon, optionally a small amount of honey, or a high-quality curcumin supplement that explicitly includes piperine or a phospholipid-based bioavailability enhancer. For breast tissue-specific outcomes, a useful additional step is a turmeric paste made with coconut oil, which contains fat-soluble compounds that further support curcumin absorption, stirred into lentil or vegetable dishes 2 to 3 times per week. The compounds in turmeric are not estrogen modulators. They operate on the inflammation and oxidative stress side of breast biology. But that side is substantial. For synergy, pair turmeric protocols with the omega-3 foods from number 7, inflammation reduction compounds when the lipid membrane component and the polyphenol component arrive simultaneously. The reason turmeric is at number 3 rather than higher is that the breast tissue-specific human trial evidence, while present in biomarker studies, is more general inflammation than direct breast cell proliferation. Number 2 has the most direct breast cell evidence on the entire list. Right here, between number 3 and number 2, I want to ask you directly. If this information is making you rethink what your kitchen can do for your hormonal and breast health, please take a moment right now to hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. We publish new videos every week focused on the science of healthy aging, including the science of healthy hormones. Your support is what keeps this work going. Thank you. Number 2 now, and this is the food that operates directly on breast cell biology through a mechanism that most women have never heard discussed. Cruciferous vegetables: broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, bok choy, cabbage, and especially broccoli sprouts. Here's the mechanism, because it is one of the most elegant in nutrition science. Cruciferous vegetables contain a sulfur-containing compound called glucoraphanin. When you chew or chop these vegetables, an enzyme called myrosinase converts glucoraphanin into sulforaphane, which has been extensively studied. Separately, cruciferous vegetables contain another compound called indole-3-carbinol, or I3C. When I3C reaches the acidic environment of the stomach, it is converted into diindolyl methane, or DIM. And here is the estrogen-specific mechanism that matters for breast tissue. Estrogen is metabolized in the liver through 2 competing pathways. One pathway produces 2-hydroxyestrone, a relatively weak, short-acting estrogen metabolite that does not strongly stimulate breast tissue proliferation. The other pathway produces 16-alpha-hydroxyestrone, a much more potent, longer-lasting, more proliferative estrogen metabolite. Published research, including a high-impact review cited over 200 times in the scientific literature, has shown that indole-3-carbinol and sulforaphane together shift estrogen metabolism toward the less potent 2-hydroxyestrone pathway and away from the more dangerous 16-alpha-hydroxyestrone pathway in both cell models and human studies. A phase 1 clinical trial published in Cancer Epidemiology, Biomarkers and Prevention examined I3C supplementation in women at high breast cancer risk and documented measurable shifts in estrogen metabolism as early as the early weeks of supplementation. Practically, the dose most often associated with measurable biomarker effects in published studies is roughly 1 to 2 cups of cooked cruciferous vegetables per day, or the equivalent of roughly 1/4 cup of broccoli sprouts, which contain up to 50 times the glucoraphanin content of mature broccoli. Lightly steam the broccoli rather than boiling it. Boiling destroys myrosinase. After chopping, let the vegetables sit for 40 minutes before cooking to allow the conversion to sulforaphane. Add mustard or wasabi to cooked cruciferous meals. These contain myrosinase and restore the conversion in cooked vegetables. For synergy, combine cruciferous vegetables with soy from number 4. Soy isoflavones occupy estrogen receptors weakly, while cruciferous indoles shift the estrogen that is produced down the safer metabolic pathway. The two work together but in different ways. Why is this at number 2 rather than number 1? Because cruciferous vegetables work primarily by modulating how much of the more dangerous estrogen metabolite is produced, but the number 1 food has evidence that reaches all the way down to direct effects on breast cell proliferation rates in randomized human trials. And now we arrive at number 1. The food that has surprised me more than any other single intervention I have reviewed in 3 decades of studying women's health: flaxseed. Let me explain why flaxseed sits at the top. Flaxseed is the richest dietary source of lignans, a class of polyphenols that the human gut bacteria convert into compounds called enterolignans, specifically enterolactone and enterodiol. These enterolignans are biologically active molecules that circulate through the bloodstream and, based on randomized human trials, reach breast tissue and exert measurable effects on breast cell proliferation rates themselves. The mechanism is layered. Lignans bind weakly to estrogen receptors, competing with endogenous estradiol in the same way soy isoflavones do, though with a slightly different binding profile. They modulate aromatase activity similar to olive oil polyphenols, but through a different molecular route. And critically, lignans have been shown in published research to inhibit the growth of estrogen receptor-positive breast cancer cells specifically. The most direct human evidence comes from a randomized Phase 2b trial published in 2020 in Cancer Prevention Research, conducted at a major academic medical center in women at increased risk for breast cancer. The trial administered flaxseed lignans to high-risk premenopausal women and found statistically significant reductions in Ki-67, a direct measure of breast cell proliferation rates in biopsied breast tissue. Ki-67 is the same biomarker that breast oncologists use to assess tumor aggressiveness clinically. A measurable change in Ki-67 in a randomized trial is one of the strongest signals possible in preventive breast health research. Case control and prospective studies have also found that women with the highest dietary lignin intake show 28 to 50% lower breast cancer risk compared to women with the lowest intake. Practically 1 to 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed per day is the dose most consistently associated with biomarker effects in published trials. Whole flaxseed is poorly absorbed because the seed coat is hard enough to pass through the digestive tract intact. Grind the flaxseed fresh each week using a small coffee grinder dedicated to the purpose, or buy freshly ground flaxseed in vacuum-sealed packaging and refrigerate immediately. Stir into morning oatmeal. Add to a smoothie with berries. Mix into Greek yogurt with walnuts. Store ground flaxseed in the refrigerator because the omega-3 ALA in flaxseed oxidizes quickly when exposed to air and light. For synergy, consume flaxseed alongside the cruciferous vegetables from number 2. The lignans in flaxseed operate on estrogen receptors, while the indoles in cruciferous vegetables operate on estrogen metabolism. The two food families are not redundant, they are complementary. The reason flaxseed sits at number 1 is the unique combination of the richest dietary lignin source, direct human trial evidence on actual breast cell proliferation, and remarkably low cost, approximately 15 cents per tablespoon. Final thoughts. Here is what I want you to take away from this video before we close. Hormonal balance and breast health are not one conversation. They are a network of conversations. Estrogen metabolism, systemic inflammation, gut bacterial environment, dietary antioxidant exposure, body composition, sleep quality, stress regulation, movement. The 7 foods we have walked through today, wild fatty fish, berries, extra virgin olive oil, whole fermented soy, turmeric paired with black pepper, cruciferous vegetables, and ground flaxseed, are not magic cures. They are evidence-supported foods whose mechanisms have been documented in peer-reviewed research specific to women's breast and hormonal biology. 1 to 2 servings of fish per week, 1 cup of berries per day, 1 to 2 tablespoons of high polyphenol olive oil daily, 1 to 2 servings of whole fermented soy per day if appropriate to your history, 1 turmeric protocol per day, 1 to 2 cups of cruciferous vegetables per day, 1 to 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed per day. That is the entire 7-food foundation. It costs less per week than a single takeout dinner. It works on overlapping but distinct biological pathways, and it is accessible to almost every woman watching this video, regardless of where she lives or what her income is. You are not too old. You are not too far along. You are not fighting your body. You are giving it the raw materials it was designed to use. The next time you walk into your kitchen, walk in with knowledge. The food on your shelves is not a passive backdrop to your day. It is a daily, repeated biological signal sent to every tissue in your body, including your breast tissue. When you choose it with awareness, you are choosing an intervention that has been studied for decades. I'm Dr. Host Name, and I have spent 3 decades watching women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s reclaim the hormonal balance and breast health confidence they thought they had lost. Every single time, the rebuilding began with the same thing, a decision. A decision to stop accepting hormonal disruption and breast health worry as inevitable, and to start using what the science actually tells us. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If this information was valuable to you, please share it with a woman you care about. Your mother, your sister, your daughter, your friend. Stay curious, take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next video.